So when you submit an HTML form, based on what we wrote in the previous lesson, we define a form tag and a closing form tag. So when we submit this form, like my name and my last name, and I save, so this is going to automatically append the data, which is the first name equal to whatever you put in there, and the last name to equal to whatever you put in there. So this method of form submission is known as get method. So the get method automatically appends the data in the form to the end of the URL. This is not good for a very sensitive form. However, if your form is not sensitive or it is just majorly for search, then it is fine if you leave it this way. However, if you need to send a sensitive data in HTML form, then you need to define a method on the form. So how do we define a method on the form? You have form, then a space followed by the method. The method of posting this form by default is always get. So if we have get, I save this page and I reload. So if I reload the page or I remove what has been appended to the end of the URL, so now we're in the clean form. So if I type in the first name and the last name and I save, so it's giving us what we expect based on get method, which is the default. However, if we need to send a sensitive or hidden data, so we should change this method to post. So the post method allows us to post whatever we have in the form to a particular URL, in which the data in the form will be hidden. So let me change this to post and save the page. So I'm going to reload this page, then type in my first name and the last name. So I'm going to save. So if I save that, we won't have anything in the URL. So let me do that, my name and the last name, then save. We can see that it has been sent to the server, but we couldn't find the data in the URL, which is good for security purpose. Now, once we send the data, like click on submit, save, how do we get the form to be posted to another page? In that case, that is where we have what we call the action element. So action, we already have method on the form. One more thing we could have is what we call the action. So action would tell us where we want to submit the form. So if the form is submitted, where should the form be submitted to? So in this case, you could have a direct URL. For example, I can type in http something google.com. This means that once we submit this form, it's going to send whatever we have in the form data to google.com and it's going to reload the page. However, because we do not have anything to do with Google with our data, because data is not Google is not expecting us to send data, so we do not have to put this here. So most times you always send data to the URL that provides the form. So in this case, index.html provides this form. If I don't put any action here, so this form is going to be submitted to the same page as index.html. But you should know that forms submitted to a page needs to be handled by a server-side technology or programming language. For example, a PHP or JavaScript page or Python page, all of that. So you won't be able to handle the page in which forms are submitted to with pure HTML. However, you should know that it is within the HTML that we define the action for which the form would be submitted to. So we could just have slash action.php. So meaning that this form would be submitted to a file called action.php, and it will then define action.php file. But because the purpose of this training is to show you how to undo the method and the action. So in in lessons or courses that has to do with backend, PHP, or Python, you will see how to handle form submissions in the backend.